Hey fam, how's it going? Elle here with Dig a Little Deeper. This is my first official video. I'm really just trying to break the mold here for myself as well as the rest of us with this experiment that I'm doing called Dig a Little Deeper. And I already have an Instagram page and Facebook page, but more importantly, I'm really trying to get involved in the YouTube world and eventually have a podcast that my partner and I will be starting up in the near future. So this is just kind of getting the ball rolling, and to better understand what Dig a Little Deeper is all about, if you haven't read about it, it is to find ways to explore certain issues a little bit more than maybe what we see on the superficial level currently, and just better understand different perceptions of situations that we may face maybe in our personal lives, as well as what we see going on in the world. And so this is really going to be information based. There will be very few times that I'm sitting here sharing my opinion, but what I'm actually doing is taking in information from all sorts of sources, and I will be citing sources for you to be able to reference and go to look into a little bit further. But I really think it's important that we're starting to kind of lose who we are as humans right now. And there's a lot going on in this world. We're being fed so much that it's confusing us. And so I'm going to be taking various topics and concentrating on them to unbiasedly dig a little bit deeper within ourselves to better understand and accept what's going on and how to navigate with these different situations that we face, like I said, in our personal lives and out in the world. So if you ever do have any requests or questions as far as what kind of issues that you would like to be discussed and brought up, you're happy to put it in the comments below or contact me. And I will say that my approach here, let me share a little bit about myself. I've always been pretty closed up in my past and very sheltered, very, introverted. And I guess over the few years of what I've experienced in my personal life and what I've gone through is that I didn't like that person. That wasn't who I wanted to be. And all of a sudden I started to bloom into this, extroverted. I'm still extrovert, I guess you could call it, but more outspoken. And there are times where I felt like I probably have taken more of the aggressive approach. I've been called a bitch before. I mean, it really is in the beholder's eye. You have to understand where I'm coming from. People who actually truly know me, get me, and understand that I'm not trying to be a bitch, that I am just being direct and I'm being straightforward. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about culture to kind of understand what we're going to be explaining through these things. And I think cultures are very important to understand. The different types of cultures that are out there are very important to understand where different people are coming from when they're speaking to you. So for instance, I'm born and raised in the Northwest, and over the years I've realized that this area is very passive aggressive kind of attitude, that they're not very direct. We're not very direct. We're not in your face. Whereas the whole kind of stigma of maybe East Coast people, like from New York, are direct in your face, just putting it out there. They are also more fast paced than us too. So it's just kind of the way the cultures are designed in different areas of the country, let alone different countries of the world. And so we've got to better understand where people are coming from. Now, like I said, I'm born and raised in the Northwest. And so I'm not wanting to necessarily kind of fall into a category of being passive or passive aggressive or introverted, things like that. I more and more have been just developing passions, really. I mean, and to me, that's the bottom line, is that I'm very, very passionate about how I feel about things, about how I see things in the world. And the other part of that is that when I am passionate about something, I've learned to take a step back and ask myself why I want to respond the way I want to respond. And it's always good to have information to back you up. So for instance, I already said in my Facebook page that, I'm not an expert in anything. I mean, I'm a licensed massage therapist, holistic practitioner. And yes, I have a lot of knowledge about that, but I don't ever feel like I'm an expert at anything. I don't have a degree in anything that I'm talking about. And frankly, I don't give a damn. I think that is just one thing that we kind of need to get over. And I think we hold that too tightly lately, is that somebody has to have a degree in order to just talk about that topic. And I think that's very, very unfair. What leads many people to getting a degree in something is their passion. And absolutely. My issue is I have a passion in so many areas. I don't know where to put that passion if I were to go back to school. I want to take animal behavior. I want to take psychology. I want to take astronomy. I have so many places that I want to go and so many things that I want to do that I'm like, okay, how can I put this to use? So I figured, well, I'm going to talk about it. But in order to talk about it, I need to be able to have some knowledge to back me up, some information to back me up, some resources to back me up. And so that's very important. So with the future videos that I will be posting and any kind of post that I'm going to have, I'm really going to make sure that I stress the importance of making sure that I am pretty well versed in what I'm talking about, that when I do have a passion about talking about something, I'm going to have resources to back me up. I'm going to be referring to books mainly. Books have empowered me. And to be honest with you, I haven't been much of a reader in the past, but I've been picking up books and listening to audiobooks more regularly. Anything from, self-help books to literature, like textbooks and things like that from professors. So, and it's really brought out that passion in me, and I feel a little bit more comfortable now to be able to talk about things. And so, I think that's important. If I have passion, I want to express, how I feel about something, or express to the world, you guys, and we talk united as a family, that I am making sure that I am including some information that you can follow up with too, so it's helpful. So I'm not sitting here just seemingly pulling stuff out of my butt, right? So with that being said, I may not be very good with my words sometimes. Sometimes I might pause and go, okay, what's the word I need to use here? Because I want to make sure that I'm talking to you as if we're having a conversation. I think that's very important. I don't want to try to be following a script, although I'll probably have notes by me to remind me of certain bullets that I want to hit. But I will be frank. I will be straightforward. I will be direct. And there will be times I might toss in a curse word or two. And just know that this is the whole point of this video right here. The basis of this video right here is to kind of set the bar, set the mood, set the ambiance for my future videos. And so basically the topic of this video today is going to be about how we have developed higher sensitivities and have become more and more offended by little things. And it's caused kind of an upheaval in our society, especially in the US. So, what we're doing as far as is creating these sensitivities and creating these easily offended pieces of how we live and how other people are functioning in this world, is really actually creating segregation. It's creating more and more segregation. And so we're really becoming a separatist society. And I'm just going to point out a few facts to understand about this. And then at the end of this conversation, I'm going to be showing you some awesome books that you should read, because they will help you better understand where I'm coming from and have more of a grasp on why things are and how maybe we can change that, right? So So the topic's going to be about why we're more easily offended nowadays and becoming more sensitive to various topics and even words. Like, yes, there's a culture out there now where people are actually calling words violent words, and so we are going to an extreme. Again, we have to understand cultures. So the U.S. is a mutt of cultures, and that's what we have to understand is we're not like different countries like Japan and Austria and Ireland and all these places that actually have kind of like their own culture, right? Which we still need to understand because we have all of those people coming here, and we have those people living here. And I'm not going to get on the subject of any kind of immigration or anything like that right now. What I'm talking about is the fact that, especially in the U.S., that's all I can speak on because that's where I live, is that we are known to be the land of the free. Okay, so I'm going to tap into that a little bit to have you understand that we are created to be the land of the free. We're also supposed to understand that we are the United States of America. Now, if you think of those words, land of the free and United States of America, you probably don't feel like we're really in that state right now, that we are actually feeling like we are a free country, that we are feeling united. We're not. So I don't see us as being United States of America, land of the free right now. And so that has a lot to do with, like I said, what's going on with the world and what we're being fed. So I think it's very, very important that we are going to better understand the different cultures that are within the world, because the cultures that are in Japan and New Zealand and Ireland and China are very, very different than ours. And so people from those countries are going to communicate differently. They may dress differently. They may have different facial expressions and gestures and ways of communicating and functioning in this world. And so instead of us just jumping to conclusions thinking that they're either too uptight or they're too lazy or they don't know how to drive or things that we always kind of throw a stereotypical label on, we need to better understand those cultures and respect those cultures, because I'm sure that you would want somebody to respect yours, but it does go both ways. We should respect other people's cultures. So that is something to hold on to, is the fact that we are the land of the free. And right now a lot of us are pushing away that concept by talking about illegal immigrants and those horrible things. If you don't speak English, you don't belong here. Things like that are just so unnecessary because that's not what we're founded on, right? We were designed to be a land of freedom, and still to this day, we have people coming from other countries coming here to live out what they feel is going to be the American dream, because where they're coming from, they don't have that freedom. They don't have that luxury to create a life that they want, that they deserve, that they're passionate about, and you can actually obtain that here in this country. So that's why they're coming over here, is they want to be able to find their happiness and live out their dream. And so that's important to respect, absolutely. Now, I'm not saying that our country is the best by any means. It definitely needs some help. It needs some work. But if you understood some of the other cultures that are out there, what are known as like really tight cultures, you would understand how free we really are still. So I think it's important, again, to learn the different cultures from other countries, as well as how we're brought up. I came from a different culture growing up as far as my childhood and upbringing and my parents raising me versus you. So we have to understand that and we have to respect that. I mean, come on, guys. If we were all the same and we all thought the same and we all acted the same, how freaking boring would that be? I would seriously get bored. Of course, we do get annoyed by people, don't we? We always have our beef with other people saying that they're stupid or whatever, and we're sick of people. I've heard that so many times. But I don't want to blame people in a sense. I don't even want to throw around the word blame, but we are as a society creating some stigmas and creating stereotypes and creating segregations to where it is dividing us horribly. And it's really, really sad, really sad. And the one thing that actually does kind of steer us into some of the beliefs that we have and the segregations that we're creating is the media. So I'm sure we can all agree that the media has its own agendas sometimes. And the agendas can be tweaked and manipulated. They can even be fabricated or just kind of blown out of proportion to make us want to think differently about an issue or a group of people or what's happening in the world or a certain person, a celebrity or president or something. And so the media does feed us a lot of garbage. And so I think it's very, very important that we are actually, if we are watching the news or reading a news article, that we're taking it with a grain of salt. Like to me, I think it's important to still pay attention to the news. I don't have cable. I don't sit there and intentionally watch the news, but I might go to the gym and I see some stories on the TV that kind of catch my attention, and I just kind of go, Sometimes I'm like, I kind of want to do a little bit more research on this because I don't want to sit there and just assume that what I'm seeing or what I'm hearing is completely like the whole truth. And so I'm a curious person. I call myself a skeptic. With anything, I call myself a skeptic. And being a skeptic means that I want to find out the legitimacy of something first before I can actually form an opinion about it, right? Being opinionated is okay. Having an opinion about something is okay. You just don't want to be so opinionated that you don't have any kind of form of information to back you up. Well, why do you feel this way? I don't know. I want to be able to, express any kind of factual data that I feel is true to me, right? And to me, I think that's the whole point, is being true to yourself, having your truth, right? And I think nowadays, like I feel like people are just getting so easily offended by other people's truth, or we are just throwing around opinions back and forth, and we are just not getting anywhere. So down to even hearing protests about capitalism and people being interviewed in the protests that are like, well, what does capitalism mean to you? Oh, it just means the big guys want our money. No, that's not what capitalism is. So if you actually understood the what capitalism really is, it actually does have its pros. Like if we didn't have capitalism in the US, I wouldn't be able to be a massage therapist. I wouldn't be able to be living the American dream, so to speak, right? Choosing what I want to do and making profit for myself. So it is really important to understand terms. It's really important to understand politics and worldviews and all of this kind of stuff to actually gather the needed information to make our own conclusions instead of jumping to conclusions with the first thing that we see or hear in the media. So I bet you if you turned on Fox News and you turn on CNN and you're watching the same story, you're going to hear completely different views. That's because most media is going to be biased. So again, it's very important to, if you want to delve in a little bit further to understand a certain issue or event that's going on in the world, to take in those different views and perhaps even dig a little bit deeper and find a resource that's non-biased. So that could be in the form of a publication like a scholarly article that can really help, because there are people out there that are unbiased, that are doing research, not following a certain path or taking a certain side in things. So information like that is out there. You just have to know what to look for and how to find it. So I've always wanted to take like a course and how to tell if a story is being biased or if a story is fake. Now that I've kind of delved into certain readings, I have been able to detect that a lot more, obviously. But taking a whole course would actually really, really help me catch those little nuances that I haven't caught before. But yes, I think it's really fascinating and important to understand if you are listening to something that's biased by the words that they use and what they emphasize and what they repeat, and same with fake news, like what kind of words are they using? What kind of source is it coming from? Like what is their data backup to give you on that? So I think that's important. So media, fake news, definitely, like I see it more often than not, even till today, that on social media itself, there are so many fake stories out there, so many. And I actually did some research to understand why there are so many fake stories out there and why we get suckered into them. I call it the trap, the social media trap, right? Is that we see something compelling, interesting, surprising, and we want to believe it. We're made to just want to believe everything, right? But I did some research and I did find some scholarly articles, and they were talking about how most of us, if not all of us, on social media at one time or another have fallen for the trap of reading or reposting fake news. And I believe it was like 28% of the time or so that we've all done that. And then I dug a little bit deeper and found another scholarly article saying that about 40% of the stories that we see on social media, 40% of the social media like story posts that we see, that we pass it on, right? And you look at it and you're like, oh my God, it has like so many views and so many people shared this and all this. They're actually driven by bots. There are actual bot sites out there. Humans aren't even behind this. And there are bot sites that are producing these stories, these made up stories or exaggerated stories, and they are actually fabricating the amount of users or shares and whatnot to make you think that it's real. And you may not even think that you're paying attention to that, but we do subconsciously pay attention to like how many views, how many clicks, how many shares there's been about a story. And to see those numbers, we're thinking, oh, it's more likely going to be true. So keep that in mind. That's very important. So 40% of the posts that you see on there are bot driven. So be careful before you click and do your research. Very important. I'm one to testify that I will see like one of my friends even, and like this is one of those I don't give a shit moments where I will see a friend post something and I'm like, it's kind of an odd story. I'm going to check it out first before I believe it, before I comment anything. And so I'll research it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's true, but that's not true or something. And so I will post a comment on these posts that my friends have shared only to make them aware to not get suckered into these kind of posts, not to argue with them. And I'll tell them that too. I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to argue with you one bit. I'm just trying to point out that there are facts in this that are not true, or that this story is completely made up. So that's all I'm doing. And if you take offense to it, sorry, not sorry. I'm really not sorry. I'm just, I'm pointing out some information that I think is important for everybody to be aware of. So there's also another piece that we've noticed is that there's been a rise in, like I said, sensitivities and being offended by certain things. I remember the first time that I ever heard a story of somebody being overly offended by a situation years ago. And to me, this was like the story that I'm like, why is this even happening? Why is this a big deal? And the story was, I remember hearing, I live in close to Seattle, Washington, and I guess a lady made a complaint that there was only a Christmas tree displayed in the SeaTac airport. And she was like, well, why not be displaying any type of other religion? Like, why aren't we, displaying a menorah or anything like that to celebrate any other religious holidays and things like that, Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and things like that. And so from what I remember, the SeaTac Airport took the Christmas tree down because of that statement. And so to me, that almost seemed like it was one of the stories that to me was a catalyst for us becoming overly sensitive or overly offended society. Now, I'm not knocking any of these other religions by any means, but I think we're getting a little too carried away, because as we see here now, it's just like, well, everybody wants to be included. Everybody wants to feel special. Everybody wants to be recognized. And I think that's where we're butting heads, is because everybody should be, absolutely. But we should also be viewed as who we truly are underneath anything, underneath any belief that we have, underneath any religion, way of living, like subcultural group that we've created, is that we're all human. We are all human. And there are three things that we all want in life: love, recognition, and success. We all want that. I mean, maybe a kid doesn't, besides love, of course. So love obviously is the number one thing that we all do desire. We all do desire. And if we don't have that love, yeah, we're going to find ways to lash out. And we react in different ways with that, right? In very, very upsetting ways, very, very disturbing ways, even that we act out. But the bottom line is that even the cruelest of people out there, the sad part is if we can actually see that they are lacking love in their life, and that they've created a bubble to not allow love into their life, they've just become more and more destructive, either to themselves or to other people. And so that's a whole other topic. I am going to be talking about things, very, very hard-hitting stuff that I've even been through. I've been through depression. I still go through episodes of depression. Anxiety. I still have anxiety attacks and episodes. I've dealt with PTSD. All these topics I'm going to be talking about. I'm also going to be talking about violence. I'm also going to be talking about murder. I'm also going to be talking about rape, because I think these are all, and guns, I think all of these are very, very important topics because we are so sensitive about them. So we have a very, very strong view, one way or the other, about these issues that we seem to be seeing and hearing about more and more now in the media, right? And again, going back to the media, what is the media feeding us, right? So there's basically this sense of coddling that's going on in this country, especially. Young ones are being raised to not go in the dirt, not go play in the dirt, not talk to strangers, not jump off their bed because something terrible is going to happen. I mean, it's getting pretty bad. I'm noticing, like, I do observe other people and their kids, like the parents and their kids, and I do see kind of a divide in that situation where I either see them let their kid do what they want and experience life, experience falling down, experience getting hurt, experience being sad, experience, not getting your own way. And then I see the parents that do whatever they can to protect their child and create this bubble of safety for their kid so that they won't feel sadness and they won't feel hurt and they won't get, kidnapped and stuff like that, right? And so there is that culture, though, right now that's being developed and growing, that coddling culture. And clarifying, too, that we consider, for instance, millennials. We decided to lump this this chunk of a generation together and just call them millennials, right? And so you'll hear some people say millennials are so driven and empowered and just like they're the go-getters and they're the future of the world. Then you hear other people say, oh, millennials are so lazy. They aren't doing anything. They're expecting to be handheld through everything. Okay, so there's actually a difference here. And it's from this book called Coddling of the American Mind. Coddling of the American Mind. Awesome book. Definitely give it a read. But those are actually iGen kids from, what was it, born from 1995 to 2012, I believe it was, is actually the iGen generation. And these are the ones that we see as being lazy or being handheld and coddled. And so there's that separation between millennials. So in general, millennials are those go-getters, whereas the iGen are conceived as being lazy. However, there's a reason for the laziness, and that is that in this society, especially with media, feeds us that life is dangerous. Life is scary. Don't go outside. Don't do this. Don't do that because you're going to die. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get kidnapped, So it's created a sense of fear for a lot of parents or just a lot of adults. And so it's kind of been implanted into the newer generation. So that's where that's all coming from. So I can't fully blame media. There's actually colleges also kind of creating this bubble of safety, or safetyism, as what the book calls it as well. But I really feel that the coddling is hurting us so much. It is really starting to dwindle our skills and our potential as people. It's very rare to see kids driven to go into a trade and become, a mechanic or a pilot or anything like that. It's being pushed to go to a four-year college right outside of high school, right? And we all know that there's many people who don't even end up using their degree after they graduate college. So that's, again, a whole other subject, but I wanted to tie it in because it does have a lot to do with what's going on right now, is that us as society, we are being coddled, and the iGen situation is kind of rubbing off on everybody else. And so we are feeling coddled. We feel like we need to be handheld. We feel like we need that special treatment and be heard for what we want and what we think is right. So it's kind of really narrowing our perception of who we are, especially as U.S. citizens. So we do have so much freedom in this country, and that's something that you should reflect on in comparison to other countries who do not have as much freedom, if any freedom at all. So be thankful for that. I think that's really appreciative. Yet I think we're abusing it right now so much that it is actually creating a tightness in our country, a tightness in our culture. So I was actually reading another book on cultures. I'm going to look it up actually for you, because it's kind of a long title because it's more of a lecture by a professor who studies cultures. And let me find it here for you. I use what's that one? Audible, or I use Libby app through the library. But it is called, no, I can't find it. No, I was actually reading that one through Audible. Customs of the World, Using Cultural Intelligence to Adapt Wherever You Are, by Professor David Livermore. So I'm actually not even halfway through. It's a really, really long one. It's almost 5 hours long. I'm doing the Audible version, like I said, of it. But it's so helpful and so useful. The reason I started listening to it is because my partner recommended it if we want to travel, especially because if we want to travel to different countries, it's wise to understand their culture and understand how they operate and communicate and express themselves and everything. So that's very important. So when you plan on traveling to a different country, I think it's very, very important to understand their culture first before you delve into it and just think, I'm going to have a great time and I'm just going to learn so much, but you might end up, rubbing somebody the wrong way just because their culture is so different than ours. Some things that we think is acceptable is not acceptable to them and vice versa. So it's also good, again, for if you are doing any kind of international business. So understanding how somebody that you might come in contact with for your business, a potential business partner or something like that, how they communicate, how they interact, how they go about doing things is very important. But now, more importantly, listening to this book, I've gotten even more so that I could even observe the different cultures, not only from people from different countries, but just in their upbringing and how they operate and, just where they came from as far as how they grew up and what they've been fed. So it helps me respect the differences even more in that manner. So I definitely recommend checking that one out. So cultures is a huge one that we need to really, really understand more and respect more, so that we're not sitting here and just assuming or stereotyping so much. It's very important. So as I was saying too, in that book, he's talking about tight cultures versus loose cultures. Well, overall, the U.S. is considered a pretty loose culture. So we don't have any very, very tight traditions that we stick to because we are, to me, like I said, we're the mutt. We allow all kinds of people from different lands, different cultures, different countries in. And so, like he was saying, there's going to be like a yoga studio next to a mosque, next to a bar. So, I mean, we're a very loose culture compared to other places. However, what we're doing right now by being so easily offended or saying our group needs attention, put us first, we're special, do this for us, please. Like I said, being highly sensitive to what other people say even, and just getting offended by what other people say without just asking questions and getting clarity first by maybe what they were actually trying to say and their intentions and everything. It's actually starting to create a tight culture for us. So I want you to think about that for a minute. The more we complain, the more we get offended by what other people say, do, and being sensitive to what other people say and different, like I said, ideas, different cultures, different upbringings, different topics even, different words, the words that people use, they're saying that are getting offended by. Basically what that's doing is if somebody is acting upon that and being highly sensitive or highly offended by any of those things, that's basically saying, no, we should be a certain way and we should be this way only. And if we all started doing that, that would create tightness in our culture. So just using a quick example, guns. Many people think that guns should be completely banned. Hey, there are countries out there that guns are banned and they actually have very low crime rates. That's great, but that's because they established that a long time ago. Whereas with us, we were born and raised in this country, okay, the first settlers and everything in this country packed heat. That's just how it was. It was there for protection. It wasn't there to say, hey, I don't like you, bang. It was there for protection. It was also used for hunting and survival. And so to take away the roots of why people actually feel the need to carry a gun with them is going to create a tight culture if you think that should be banned. So we have to understand the different cultures in gun use. I think is important. And when you throw in assault rifles, which is still a very vague general term and people don't quite understand still what assault rifles are, and you lump that in together with just guns, that's even tighter. We can't do that. You know, there's a huge difference because there's all types of guns for all different purposes. So that's just one example. Whole other conversation, right? So we have these segregations. We have these special needs. We have these conditions that more and more over the years have developed, have surfaced, have become more prominent. Now, I'm not knocking them by any means whatsoever, because especially for me, I am a woman. I have anxiety. I have dealt with PTSD, which I've chosen to work on. Things like that. I am white. Okay, so there are many things that can be argued with and against who I am, right? And that's, to me, it's just all superficial. It's all superficial. And what we're doing with certain situations and certain conditions and certain genders and certain races is that we are creating these little bubbles for them. Like, here, you're protected. We want to be protected. We want to be protected. We want to be protected. And so therefore, we're just floating around in little bubbles. And what that is going to do is it's going to create so much more segregation and so much more headbutting. And, you know, again, I'm going to be talking about things like anxiety and PTSD. The mental illness in this country needs attention. The women in this country deserve the same rights as men. Yes, I agree. Blacks, whites, Asians, everybody needs the same respect. Yes, I agree with all that. But what we're doing with the protests and these rallies that we're doing is creating segregation. Yes, we want equality, but let's talk about what equality truly means. So we will be talking about that as well. So again, I fully support any group and their mission and movements. If they're being treated unfairly, absolutely. But we have to find a way to do it that we can actually be more inclusive instead of exclusive and screaming for more intention than the other. So that's very important. So there are pros and cons to being the country that we are. And again, if you listen to that lecture book on culture, you get a lot out of it and understand that a little bit more. So like, for instance, Norway is a good example of a country who doesn't want any one person to feel like they are special above the rest. And so that's why they have kind of like this straight line kind of clean look to them. And like, for instance, IKEA and stuff like that is all pretty simple and basic, and stuff like that is because they're not looking for anybody to have any kind of special attention. Everybody should be special and equal and all that. So that's really good. We also have to keep in mind that the US is very competitive and not very collaborative. So when we get competitive, we have a lot of protests that don't really, they get somewhere, but in a very negative way, if that makes sense. But we've been raised in this country to kind of be above the rest, and it's a survival of the fittest and all of that kind of stuff. And while that mentality can work in some ways for some people, it's still important to be collaborative. Very, very important to be collaborative and collective on issues. Absolutely. So to kind of wrap this up, we need to find a way to not be so close-minded, to better understand, again, different cultures, where different people are coming from, with their thoughts, with their actions, with their ideas, with their words. Very important. And we need to be willing to learn of others' views and their way of living, so that we can actually grow and evolve as a better country. If we want a better country, we can't point fingers. We have to start with ourselves. Who do we want to be? Right? It's important. So we got to dig a little deeper with that one. So remember, the U.S. is the land of the free, and we are supposed to be the United States of America. How can you, how can I, how can we create that for ourselves? It all starts with learning to not be so sensitive and not be so easily offended. Take a step back, do some research, and ask questions so that we can evolve together. Thanks for watching.